Here are some probable questions and answers for the Merchant of Venice that might help you prepare for your FY BA LLB exam under Mumbai University. These questions are framed around significant themes, characters, and legal aspects in the play. 1. Explain the central theme of justice versus mercy in The Merchant of Venice. Answer. The theme of justice versus mercy is central to The Merchant of Venice. In the courtroom scene, Act 4, Scene 1, Shylock demands justice by enforcing the bond, while Portia, disguised as a lawyer, pleads for mercy. The play illustrates the rigid application of law through Shylock's insistence on the pound of flesh, contrasting with Portia's famous speech on the quality of mercy. Ultimately, the resolution demonstrates that strict justice without compassion can lead to cruelty, and mercy has the power to transcend law and foster humanity. 2. Discuss Shylock's character as a victim and a villain. Answer. Shylock is a complex character, portrayed both as a victim and a villain. As a victim, he suffers from the anti-Semitic attitudes of Venetian society, particularly from Antonio, who insults and undermines him. However, Shylock's vengeful demand for Antonio's pound of flesh paints him as a villain. His rigid adherence to the bond and his refusal to show mercy highlight his darker side. This duality makes Shylock one of Shakespeare's most intriguing characters, embodying both human suffering and vindictiveness. 3. How does Portia demonstrate her intelligence in the courtroom scene? Answer. Portia displays exceptional intelligence in the courtroom scene by disguising herself as a male lawyer and outwitting Shylock. While Shylock insists on the bond, Portia uses the exact wording to turn the law against him, declaring that Shylock may take the pound of flesh but not shed a drop of Antonio's blood. This clever interpretation not only saves Antonio but also highlights Portia's sharp wit, understanding of the law, and ability to act decisively under pressure. 4. What is the significance of the bond in the play? Answer. The bond is a pivotal plot device in The Merchant of Venice. It symbolizes legal rigidity and the potential for law to be manipulated for personal vendettas. Shylock's bond with Antonio represents his attempt to seek revenge against the societal prejudice he has endured. However, the resolution of the bond in the courtroom scene underscores the play's moral justice must be tempered with mercy, as an unyielding pursuit of legal rights can lead to moral downfall. 5. Explain the role of women in The Merchant of Venice. Answer. Women in The Merchant of Venice play significant roles, often challenging the constraints of their societal roles. Portia, in particular, defies expectations by displaying intelligence, courage, and resourcefulness, especially in the courtroom scene. Nerissa and Jessica also assert their independence, though in different ways. Through these characters, Shakespeare critiques gender norms, showing that women can be as capable and influential as men in navigating complex situations. 6. Analyze the bond between Antonio and Bassanio. Answer. The relationship between Antonio and Bassanio is central to the play, characterized by deep loyalty and affection. Antonio's willingness to risk his life for Bassanio by signing Shylock's bond illustrates his selflessness and devotion. Bassanio, in turn, values Antonio's friendship and seeks to repay his generosity. Their bond reflects the Renaissance ideals of friendship and mutual support, which were often depicted as transcending romantic relationships in importance. 7. What is the role of prejudice in The Merchant of Venice? Answer. Prejudice is a recurring theme in The Merchant of Venice, most notably in the treatment of Shylock as a Jew. The character's derogatory remarks and actions against Shylock reflect the anti-Semitic attitudes of the time. Additionally, Portia's comment about the Prince of Morocco highlights racial prejudice. Through these instances, Shakespeare exposes the biases of society, while the consequences of prejudice are shown through Shylock's bitterness and downfall. 8. Discuss the significance of the casket subplot. Answer. The casket subplot serves as a contrast to the main plot and reinforces the themes of choice and appearance versus reality. Through the suitor's choices of gold, silver, and lead caskets, Shakespeare explores human values. The Prince of Morocco and the Prince of Aragon are deceived by superficial appearances, while Bassanio's choice of the lead casket shows his inner wisdom and genuine love for Portia. This subplot highlights the importance of inner worth over outward allure. 9. What legal principles can be derived from the play? Answer. Several legal principles can be explored in The Merchant of Venice. These include strict interpretation of contracts. Shylock insists on the exact terms of the bond, showing the dangers of inflexible legalism. Equity and fairness. Portia's argument for mercy emphasizes the need for equity to balance rigid law. The spirit versus the letter of the law. Portia's handling of the bond demonstrates that the spirit of the law should guide justice rather than its literal wording. 10. How does the play end, and what is its significance? Answer. The play concludes on a mostly happy note, with the romantic couples Bassanio and Portia, Gratiano and Nerissa reunited, and Antonio's life and fortune saved. However, Shylock's fate is somber. He is forced to convert to Christianity and loses his wealth. The ending highlights the play's dichotomy, the triumph of mercy and love on one hand, and the harsh consequences of revenge and prejudice on the other. Tips for exam preparation. Focus on the courtroom scene as it integrates key themes and legal elements. Understand character motivations, especially of Shylock, Portia, and Antonio. Be prepared to discuss Shakespeare's commentary on law, justice, and societal issues. Critical essay on Act 4, Scene 1 of The Merchant of Venice. Act 4, Scene 1 of The Merchant of Venice, the iconic courtroom scene, is one of Shakespeare's most dramatic and controversial moments. It is a potent amalgamation of legal debate, emotional intensity, and ethical dilemmas. The scene not only determines the fates of the principal characters, but also serves as a commentary on justice, mercy, and societal prejudice. The magistrate's prejudiced opening. From the outset, the trial reflects a biased judicial system. The Duke, as the chief magistrate, opens the case by condemning Shylock, the plaintiff, and siding with Antonio, the defendant. He denounces Shylock as a stony adversary and an inhuman wretch, reflecting not only his personal bias but also the prevailing anti-Semitic sentiments of Venetian society. This breach of judicial impartiality undermines the fairness of the trial, making it evident that Shylock's case will be judged not purely on legal grounds but through the lens of societal prejudice. Advocacy for the defendant. The Duke's plea for Shylock to show mercy further reveals his partiality. Rather than adjudicating the case on its legal merits, the Duke appeals to Shylock's morality, urging him to forgive Antonio's debt. This advocacy for Antonio before Shylock even presents his argument exemplifies the imbalance of power in the courtroom. Shylock, a Jewish moneylender, is cast as the other in a Christian-dominated society, and the court's collective alignment with Antonio reinforces this divide. Public commentary and Gratiano's outbursts. The courtroom scene blurs the line between formal legal proceedings and theatrical spectacle, allowing the audience, represented by characters like Gratiano, to make disruptive remarks. Gratiano's unchecked tirades against Shylock, calling him a dog and wolfish, contribute to the humiliation of the plaintiff. The lack of decorum in the courtroom reflects a societal consensus that Shylock is unworthy of dignity or respect. This chaotic atmosphere, in which an audience member can openly mock and deride the plaintiff, further emphasizes the courtroom's inherent unfairness and the imbalance of justice. The reversal of roles. The most striking twist in the scene is the sudden reversal of roles, where Shylock, initially the plaintiff, becomes the defendant. As Shylock insists on the enforcement of the bond, Portia, disguised as the male lawyer Balthazar, uses the law against him. Her interpretation, that Shylock may take his pound of flesh but not spill a drop of Antonio's blood, is a masterstroke of legal wit but also a manipulation of the law's literalism. Following this, Shylock is accused of conspiring against Antonio's life, a charge that carries severe consequences: forfeiture of his property and forced conversion to Christianity. This reversal highlights the precariousness of justice when it is wielded by those in power. Shylock, initially empowered by the bond, is stripped of his agency and dignity. The punishment exceeds his crime, underscoring the societal need to not only defeat but utterly humiliate the marginalized figure. Conclusion. Act 4, Scene 1 is a microcosm of the play's broader themes of justice, mercy, and prejudice. While the courtroom ostensibly serves as a site of justice, it becomes a stage for societal bias and the persecution of the outsider. Shylock's transformation from plaintiff to defendant underscores the vulnerability of those who challenge the status quo. Despite Portia's eloquent plea for mercy, the resolution of the trial reflects anything but compassion, leaving the audience to question whether justice can ever be impartial in a world rife with inequality. Here's a brief analysis of the characters from Act 4, Scene 1, focusing on the legal aspects. 1. Shylock. Shylock, the plaintiff in the trial, seeks the enforcement of a legally binding bond that entitles him to a pound of Antonio's flesh if he defaults on his loan. Shylock's insistence on the literal interpretation of the bond reflects his belief in the strict application of the law. However, his refusal to show mercy ultimately backfires, as Portia uses the law against him. Shylock transitions from plaintiff to defendant when he is charged with conspiracy against Antonio, leading to the forfeiture of his property and forced conversion to Christianity. Legally, Shylock represents the dangers of rigidity in the interpretation of contracts without considering ethical and societal norms. 2. Bassanio. Bassanio, Antonio's close friend and the beneficiary of Antonio's loan, plays a supportive role in the trial. He offers Shylock money, several times the debt owed, in an attempt to settle the matter out of court. This shows his awareness of the potential inequities in the legal system and his preference for negotiation over strict legal action. Legally, Bassanio's actions highlight the limitations of monetary compensation when contracts are enforced literally. 3. Antonio. Antonio, the defendant, is at the mercy of Shylock's bond. While his financial failure and the subsequent default on the bond make him legally liable, the courtroom proceedings reveal the biases that work in his favor. The Duke and Portia advocate for Antonio, emphasizing mercy as a higher principle than strict legalism. Antonio's eventual victory in the trial stems from the exploitation of technicalities in the bond, which prohibits Shylock from spilling any of his blood. Legally, Antonio benefits from a system that prioritizes Christian morality over fairness in contractual obligations. 4. Portia as Balthazar. Disguised as the lawyer Balthazar, Portia is the most legally astute character in this scene. Her argument is based on the literal interpretation of the bond: Shylock can take a pound of flesh but without spilling blood, which is impossible. She also invokes Venetian law to charge Shylock with conspiracy for endangering Antonio's life. Portia's ability to manipulate the legal framework exposes the inherent flexibility of the law, which can be interpreted to serve the interests of those in power. Her actions reflect the interplay between legal reasoning and moral advocacy, highlighting how justice is shaped by those who wield legal authority. In Act 4, Scene 1, all four characters illuminate different facets of law, its rigidity, flexibility, biases, and moral implications, creating a complex tapestry of justice and societal power dynamics.